My brother said you should learn to let go, sometimes after demanding to move into my house to start his married life. So I replied, you're the one who needs to let go of the idea that this is your house. Growing up, I was always the other son. My younger brother Junas was the golden child. Athletic, charming, loud in all the right ways. If he broke a window playing football, it was boys being boys. If I forgot to do a chore because I was studying, it was disrespectful. It was always like that. Every compliment I got was framed around Junas. You did well on your test, Eero. Maybe you'll catch up to your brother someday. But I never made a fuss. Not because I didn't feel it, but because deep down I thought maybe if I just stayed the course, kept working hard, they'd see me, appreciate me, or at the very least stop using me as a contrast to make Junas look shinier. I graduated early, got a job in tech, and eventually bought a modest but beautiful home just outside the city. I didn't announce it. I didn't invite anyone over for a tour. I just built my life one step at a time. And when the pandemic hit and remote work became permanent, I poured my energy into renovating the house with my own hands. It was a labor of love. Every tile, every shelf, every little detail. It became my sanctuary, my space, which made it all the more insulting when my mother referred to it as Junas's future home. That moment didn't happen overnight. The lead-up took years, and it started with a phone call 6 months ago. "Hey, sweetie," my mum said in that sing-song voice she uses when she wants something. "Junas is looking for a place to propose to Aino. You remember Aino, right?" Of course, that's his girlfriend. "She's a fiancé now, technically," she said, giggling. "He's going to pop the question soon, and we were thinking it might be nice to do it at your place." I hesitated, not because I didn't want to be generous, but because of the way she said we. "My place?" I asked, already knowing where this was going. "Well, it's just Junas wants something intimate, and your backyard is just so lovely with the lights and that wooden deck you built. Oh, and that little fire pit area. Remember when you showed me that? It's perfect. And you wouldn't even have to worry about anything. We'd handle food, decorations, everything. So it's a proposal, yes, and then a little celebration afterward. Just close family and a few friends." I said yes. Like an idiot, I said yes. Partly because I figured it would be a small event, and partly because I won't lie, a part of me was flattered. It felt like they were finally acknowledging that I'd made something of myself. That maybe, for once, my space was worth showing off. That illusion didn't last long. The proposal turned into an engagement party, then a rehearsal dinner, and before I could catch my breath, they were calling it the family estate. My mum said it casually one night while I was on the phone with her. "When Junas and Aino move in, maybe they'll let you stay in the guest room just like old times." I laughed. She didn't. It took everything in me not to say something then, but I was still clinging to this delusion that maybe it was a joke. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe if I just let it go, they'd come to their senses. But no, it got worse. Yona started stopping by unannounced with Aino showing her around like he was the listing agent. I caught him once sketching something in a notebook on my kitchen counter. "What's that?" I asked. "Oh, just some layout ideas," he said with a grin. "You know, for when we redo the place. Aino wants an open concept between the kitchen and living area, maybe a skylight or two, and I've got a buddy who can redo the floors for cheap." "Junas," I said flatly, "this is my house." "Yeah, man, of course," he said. "But Mum said you might be looking to move eventually, and I figured I walked out." I didn't trust myself to speak. Every time I tried to bring it up to set a boundary, I'd get steamrolled. "Don't be so sensitive," my mum would say. "Junas is just excited." Or, "You've always been so generous, Eero. Don't start being petty now." That one really got to me, as if saying this is my house was somehow petty, as if defending the life I built made me the villain. And then came the engagement party. They didn't even ask. I just got a group text from my mom that said, "Save the date. Junas and Aino's engagement bash at Eero's place." The flyer she attached had a picture of my backyard on it, the one I built with my own 2 hands, the pergola I constructed, the garden lights I wired, all displayed like it was part of their love story. I didn't reply to the text, not even a thumbs up, but I didn't stop it either. Not yet. Part of me wanted to see how far they'd go. Part of me wanted to know if they'd even realize how wrong it was. They didn't. The day of the party, I watched from the upstairs window as guests trickled in. My house, the one I mowed, painted, repaired, was decorated in gaudy balloons and banners. A huge sign over the front door read, "The future begins here." The moment I stepped inside, I barely recognized my own house. My kitchen had been turned into a serving station with catering trays everywhere, and my furniture had been pushed around to make space for a temporary bar. The framed photos that belonged to me were gone, replaced by engagement pictures of Jonas and Aino. Even my own paintings had been taken off the walls and shoved into a hallway closet. When I walked downstairs, nobody welcomed me like I was the homeowner. They treated me like I was there to help. One of Jonas's friends pointed toward the garage and said, "Hey, can you grab some more ice?" Aino hardly even acknowledged me. Jonas was already a little drunk, standing with one arm around Aino while giving a speech to a group of relatives. I stayed by the doorway watching everything, wondering if anyone would bother thanking me. Then my mom raised her glass. "I just want to say," she began from the deck steps, "how proud I am of my boys, especially Jonas, my shining star. You've always made us proud. You've always led with heart, strength, and passion. You were meant for great things, and this house, this home, is only the beginning." Everyone clapped, but she was not finished. "And Eero," she said, smiling at me, "you've always been the dependable one, the backup son, the one who never asked for much. We're so grateful that you shared this home with your brother. He deserves it." I didn't smile. I didn't laugh. I didn't even react. I just lifted my glass, nodded once, and walked back inside. Nobody in that backyard had any idea what was coming. 2 days before the party, I had met with a woman named Emmy. She was smart, efficient, and incredibly thorough. She also happened to be the new owner of the house where everyone was celebrating. I signed the paperwork that morning, and she was supposed to arrive about 10 minutes later, right before the next toast. At exactly 6:42 in the evening, the doorbell rang. I was already standing in the hallway while laughter and the sound of clinking glasses drifted in from the backyard. The smell of catered shrimp and cheap white wine filled the house. Outside, my family was celebrating my brother's engagement in a home they believed already belonged to him. I opened the door. Emmy walked in with calm confidence. She wore navy slacks, a cream blouse, and carried a leather folder under her arm. Her dark hair was tied back in a ponytail, and she quietly looked around at the decorations while Jonas's laughter echoed from outside. "Do they know?" she asked. I shook my head. "Not yet." She smiled slightly. "This should be interesting." I offered her a drink, out of habit, but she declined. Instead, she opened her folder and checked the paperwork. Inside were the deed transfer, the title confirmation, and a formal notice for anyone living there who was not the owner. It was more of a formality than an eviction. I wanted it to serve as a wake-up call. After another minute, I nodded, and we walked into the backyard together. The party instantly went quiet. The laughter stopped. Conversations died. Every eye turned toward us. Jonas's smile faded as confusion spread across his face. My mother, still holding her wine glass, stared at Emmy with a puzzled look. I cleared my throat. "Everyone, this is Emmy. She owns the house now." Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then my dad laughed. "Come on, Eero," he said. "Don't be ridiculous." Emmy stepped forward with a polite smile. "He's telling the truth," she said. "The paperwork was completed this morning. I'm now the legal owner of this property. You're welcome to enjoy the rest of the evening, but after tonight this is no longer a family home." Jonas slowly got to his feet. "Wait, what are you talking about? This is my brother's house." "It was," Emmy replied calmly, "until he sold it." The color drained from my mother's face. "You're joking." "I'm not." She turned to me. "Eero, why would you do this? This is your brother's engagement party." Exactly, I said. His engagement party, in my house. The same house all of you have been acting like already belonged to him. You moved my furniture, you redecorated my home, you planned your future around property that was never yours. You stood on my deck and toasted Junus like he already owned this place. Well, now it doesn't belong to me anymore either. My voice stayed calm, but inside I was filled with years of anger, hurt, and disappointment from always being pushed aside. Junus threw up his hands. "Come on, man," he said. "This is insane. Why would you sell the house to a complete stranger?" Junus demanded. "She's not a stranger," I said. "She's my business partner. We're investing in a new apartment building downtown together. I own half of it because I've been working behind the scenes while all of you kept giving Junus credit for a life he never built." Aino leaned over and whispered something to Junus, but he ignored her. My mum finally spoke again. "You're being petty, Eero. You're punishing all of us just because we were excited to celebrate your brother." I looked at her. "You called me the backup son in front of everyone." "That was just a joke." "No, it wasn't. And it wasn't the first time. It was just the first time you said it in front of enough people to turn it into a speech." I glanced around the backyard. Several relatives suddenly looked away. A few of my cousins shifted uncomfortably. Even my Aunt Sani, usually the calmest person in the family, was shaking her head. "You never really saw me," I continued. "Not when I got into college early. Not when I bought this house. Not when I worked nights and weekends to turn it into a home. And when you finally paid attention to me, it was only so you could hand everything over to Junus." Emmy quietly cleared her throat. "There's no need to rush tonight," she said. "Please enjoy the rest of your gathering. But beginning tomorrow, I'll need access to the property for an inspection. Formal notice will be sent to everyone listed as living here." Junus looked like he was about to explode. My mother looked close to tears. Then my father finally spoke. "You're just jealous." His words hit harder than I expected, not because I'd never heard them before, but because he said them so casually, as if years of being ignored could be explained away by jealousy. "You really think I'm jealous of him?" I asked. "I built something with my own hands. I worked for every bit of it. And all of you treated it like it was just waiting for the real son to take over. So no, I'm not jealous. I'm just finished." I turned around and walked back into the house. Emmy came in behind me, and the sliding door closed with a soft click. Inside, everything felt quiet. "You okay?" she asked. I slowly shook my head. "No, but I will be." Through the window, I watched Junus pacing with his hands on his head. My mum was waving her arms while she talked. My dad just sat there, still trying to process everything. The strange part was I didn't feel like I'd won. I just felt empty, like I'd finally let go of something I'd been holding on to for years. I went upstairs to my bedroom, a room that would soon belong to someone else. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall until my phone buzzed. It was a text from Junus. "You'll regret this. Family is forever." I looked at the message for a few seconds, then deleted it without replying. Sometimes family isn't forever. Sometimes it's just something you finally have the strength to leave behind. When the party ended, the silence felt even louder than the celebration had. People left a few at a time. My cousins said awkward goodbyes. Junus's friends quietly slipped out while whispering to each other. My parents and Junus stayed much longer. I could hear them downstairs talking in low, tense voices while I packed my things. I never went back downstairs. The house wasn't mine anymore, and I had already accepted that. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Before sunrise the next morning, I was gone. I left with one suitcase, a duffel bag, and a folder holding the signed paperwork. Everything else stayed behind. The furniture, the dishes, the decorations, I walked away from all of it. The only thing I took was a framed picture of myself at 18, standing in front of the house the day I bought it, smiling while holding the keys. Back then, I believed owning that house meant I had finally earned my family's respect. I was wrong. Respect doesn't come from what you build. It comes from the people willing to recognize what you've built. For the next 2 weeks, I lived in a small studio apartment downtown that smelled like fresh paint and empty rooms. I barely slept. I answered emails without thinking, lived on cold pizza, and spent too many nights staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd gone too far. More than once, I almost called my parents. I almost apologized. Then I'd remember my mom proudly calling me the backup son. I'd remember Junaz making plans to renovate my house as if it already belonged to him. Every time those memories came back, I stayed silent. They didn't call me either, not once. Then a letter arrived. It was from my father. It was typed, formal, and signed with his full name, almost like an official notice. He wrote that my actions had been immature, emotionally manipulative, and a betrayal of the family. According to him, I had embarrassed everyone and humiliated Junaz. My father wrote that if I had problems with the family, I should have talked to them privately instead of embarrassing everyone. He never asked how I was doing. He never mentioned the years I spent being ignored. The letter ended with, "You'll be welcome back into this family when you're ready to act like a man." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it sounded exactly like him. He was so convinced he was right that he couldn't see the damage his favoritism had caused. I never answered the letter. Instead, I threw myself into my new project. Emmy and I had been looking at investment properties for months. She used to be a real estate attorney before becoming an investor. She was smart, calm, and always thinking several steps ahead. We first met at a conference where I gave a presentation about property technology. She asked thoughtful questions afterward, and after meeting for coffee a few times, we realized we shared the same long-term goals. The apartment building wasn't impressive yet. It was an old brick building that had been partially stripped down in a neighborhood that was growing fast. Most people would have walked right past it, but I saw something different. I saw potential that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. Every morning I showed up at 7:30 with coffee and blueprints. I met with contractors, handled problems, took notes, and worked right alongside everyone else. It was just me and the job. No parents looking over my shoulder. No brother taking credit. No empty praise. And little by little, it healed me. The emptiness I had carried for years slowly disappeared. It wasn't replaced by revenge or pride. It was replaced by peace. I finally realized I didn't need my family's approval anymore. Still, life has a funny way of bringing people back. One Thursday morning, I ran into Junaz. I was standing in line at a bakery near the construction site with a muffin in one hand and a contractor's invoice on my phone when I heard his voice. "Well, look who's eating carbs now." I turned around. Junaz stood there wearing a designer hoodie, sunglasses resting on top of his head, and the same confident smile, although it didn't look quite as convincing anymore. "Junaz," I said. He stepped into line beside me. "So this is your neighborhood now? Dad must be proud." I ignored the comment. "You following me?" "No. I know work's a block away. We're looking at apartments. I saw your name on the blueprints outside." He paused before speaking again. "I didn't think you actually had the guts to do it. Selling the house and throwing everyone out. That was brutal." "It was my house," I answered. "You can't throw people out of something they never owned." He laughed under his breath. "You didn't just burn the bridge. You blew it up. Mom's still crying over what happened." I didn't say anything. I could still picture her smiling while she called me the backup son. She wasn't crying then. Junaz stepped closer. "You proved your point, all right? You're not second best anymore. But you proved it to the wrong people. You really think this building and your business partner make you better than us?" "I don't think I'm better than anyone," I said. "I just don't owe you anything anymore." He opened his mouth, then stopped. After a few seconds, he shook his head. "You've changed." I looked him in the eye. "No, you just finally noticed me after I stopped letting everyone walk all over me." Without another word, he turned around and left the bakery. That evening, I sat in my rented loft above the construction office with a bottle of wine beside the window. The city was alive below me. Somewhere people were celebrating. Somewhere others were falling apart. Then my phone started ringing. It was my mum. I let it ring until it stopped. She called again. I ignored that one too. Some calls aren't worth answering until you've finally moved on. 3 weeks later, I finally listened to her voicemail. Maybe I was ready. Maybe I just wanted to know if anything had changed. I sat on the floor of my loft with the phone on speaker while the city lights glowed outside. "Hi, sweetheart," my mum began in a soft voice. "I don't know if you're still upset, but I miss you. We all miss you. Junius, especially." I knew that wasn't true. I know things got out of hand. Maybe we all said things we shouldn't have, but families make mistakes. That doesn't mean you walk away. You've always been the strong one, Eero. Don't let one night erase everything we've been through. One night. She still believed this was only about what happened at the party. She never mentioned the years of comparisons, the constant favoritism, or how they treated my house like it already belonged to Junius. She never apologized for calling me the backup son. Instead, everything was reduced to families make mistakes. Then she finally got to the real reason she called. Anyway, I know this isn't really your problem, but Junius and I know are having a hard time right now. They were really counting on getting that house. They've been looking at apartments, my mum continued, but nothing feels right. I was hoping maybe you could help them, even if it's just with the down payment. We all know you're doing well now. The voicemail ended. I set my phone on the counter, poured myself a drink and stood there staring at the ceiling. I couldn't believe the entitlement. There wasn't even a real apology. It was just another version of the same old message. You're the responsible one, so fix everything. That's when an idea came to me. It wasn't driven by anger or revenge. It was something much calmer. I wasn't going to argue with them anymore or try to make them understand. Instead, I decided to make my point in a way they would never forget. A few blocks from the apartment Junius and Aino were renting sat an old duplex that nobody wanted. It had warped floors, outdated plumbing, a leaning fence, and had been sitting on the market for nearly a year. But it was in a great location. I bought it quietly through my limited liability company and paid cash. Over the next 2 months, I completely renovated it. I didn't build my dream home. I turned it into a perfect model rental. Every wall was painted, every fixture replaced, every room cleaned until it looked brand new. I fixed up the yard into a cozy garden patio and left professional brochures on the kitchen island under a fake property management company called Bright Pine Living. Then I made my next move. I never contacted Junius or Aino directly. Instead, I had my assistant post the rental online, knowing Aino checked apartment listings almost every day. The photos looked amazing, the location was perfect, and the rent was expensive but still within their budget. 2 days later, they booked a showing. I made sure I wasn't there. For security, I had installed cameras inside the house. They recorded video only, no sound. Later that evening, I watched the footage. Aino walked in first, smiling almost immediately. Junius followed behind her, looking around with approval as he ran his hand across the new countertops. They went through every room like they had already fallen in love with the place. Then Junius picked up one of the brochures. A second later, he stopped. At the bottom of the page, under the management information, was the owner's name, Eero Laaksonen. The colour disappeared from his face. Aino asked him something. I couldn't hear her, but he handed her the brochure. Her expression changed from confusion to frustration almost instantly. They left a few minutes later. I never heard from either of them. A week after that, I rented the duplex to a young couple with a toddler and a golden retriever. I even gave them a discount because I wanted them to treat it like a long-term home. That house was never meant for Junius. It never would be. The last chapter came quietly. The house I had sold before the engagement party turned out to be an excellent investment. Emmy and I renovated a few small things, took advantage of the strong market, and listed it for sale. Within a week, we had 3 competing offers. We sold it to a retired couple from Vermont, who wanted a peaceful place to enjoy retirement. As part of the sale, we filmed a promotional video showing the house, the backyard, and the garden in the morning sunlight. After it was finished, I uploaded the video to YouTube. Then I emailed the link to my mother with one short message. "Here's the house you toasted in. Thought you'd like to see how it turned out." She never answered. I haven't spoken to my family since then. No phone calls, no messages, not even the usual passive-aggressive holiday cards. Just silence and peace. Looking back, I realized I never needed revenge. What I needed was distance. I had to stop trying to earn love that always came with conditions. Now, years later, I stand inside a high-rise building that Emmy and I own together. I watch new tenants sign their leases and see something we built from the ground up. For the first time in my life, I know what it feels like to be seen. Not by my family, by myself. That's how my story really ends. I didn't become the better son. I simply stopped being the backup